Welcome to episode 217 of the Loane Hockey Podcast, where today we're going to be talking about some standouts in the Beanpot in last night's matchup between BC and BU. And obviously, BC was the favorite coming into this game in terms of how they played and how they've been playing throughout the year. But BC or BU, they were just control and play. And that first period, it looked like BU was off to a very, very slow start. When I was watching it, I thought BC, they were off to a very strong start. I believe the shots at one point in the first period were 16-4 BC. And eventually BU was able to find their way back into the game in about the second period in the early stages of the third. So they were able to control play there and really dominate the back half of the game. And they were in control a lot of that time as well. So we'll start with some standouts on their side. Thought Gavin McCarthy is really noticeable and obviously a really intriguing prospect and just plays a steady two-way game and he's steady in transition, he's steady offensively, he's reliable defensively, and he's really good with his gap control, really good with his feet and how he maneuvers with his feet. He was really intriguing to watch, defending side to side and defending using his cutbacks, defending with his skating in general. And he was really noticeable all throughout this game. And then Brandon Svoboda, who's a Sharks prospect and was drafted from them a few years prior, he was really noticeable throughout this game. I thought he did a really good job controlling plays at both ends of the ice. Two-way player who can be a center, he can be a play driver. He's very effective offensively, but also defensively, and can really control play in those situations. So he had a really nice goal, really nice finesse finish on his shot in the ozone coming down the flank, and really trying to get inside on his shot and did a really good job there. And he was just really noticeable. And I thought he was subtle in terms of his details, but he was really noticeable in terms of how he's able to control play in many different situations as well. Cole Eisman, who had a goal off the rush. Once again, I feel like every time I watch Cole Eisman, he's always scoring or creating off the rush. And obviously, an Islanders prospect, he was drafted this past year. He's got a lot of intriguing raw talent when you look at his scoring ability and his playmaking. He's a dual threat player, and I feel like he's really rounded himself out even more so far this season at BU as a playmaking forward. And obviously, what stands out the most when it comes to him is how he scores goals and how he's able to finish on his shots. But certainly a guy that can be able to be relied upon as a playmaker and as a pass first player as well. And then Mikhail Yegorov was also really noticeable in net. I thought he was doing a really good job shutting plays down and being able to shut ice down in the crease and just was playing very effective hockey and was really noticeable at being able to be deep in his crease but also be aggressive when need be. So he was one of the players in this game that was really noticeable. And then also Cole Hudson, and we can't forget about Cole Hudson. He was just dominant. He was the MVP of the Beanpot. He was so good offensively, so reliable in transition, so reliable in terms of the power play, and plays a really consistent offensive game as well. And certainly a guy that you can rely upon in so many different key situations, and is a guy that can play so many roles and be relied upon in so many different key situations as well. Then as for Boston College, I felt like Jacob Fowler was really good in net, even though he didn't necessarily get the support that he needed. He was really good as a backbone of the team and was able to control as many shots as he could and be able to control as many rebounds as he could. And obviously, BC was giving up a lot the back half of the game, so he needed to be more in control of how he was dominating and needed to be in control of the game a little bit further, many than and more so than other players as well. And then I thought Ryan Leonard, James Higgins, Gabriel Perreault, those guys were all really noticeable to no surprise. And then Eamon Powell was really noticeable. And I liked his game, steady game. He's a grad player playing his fifth year at BC, and it's no surprise why he'd want to come back to try and win again. And he's a guy that's subtly flashy. Like I noticed some of his decisions where he was not afraid to be aggressive and challenge situations, but at the same time, he was a guy who could play a two-way game. He could be reliable defensively. He can be reliable as a shutdown player and just be reliable in a lot of key situations. So he was really good, really noticeable, and really fun to watch from that perspective. I really like Andre Gasso as well, a Boston prospect. I wouldn't be surprised at some point if we see Gasso end up playing for the Bruins. I feel like with his size, his reach, his ability to play a two-way game, his ability to play a power game, his ability to play a skill game. I believe he's 6'3", so in tandem with his size, his skill, and his compete and his two-way game, I feel like you're getting that roundedness that you'd want out of a later round prospect and a later round draft pick, and has continued to get better over his time at BC. He's been last year, I would say he looked a little bit more productive than offensively than he is this year thus far, but certainly I feel like down the final stretch of the season, we're going to see more offense out of him, and obviously BC is going to be a team that potentially goes far out of the regionals and into the potentially the Frozen Four, as we saw them play in the Frozen Four last year. So very likely that we see that happening again this year. So we'll see what happens in that circumstance as well. And then there's one more name I wanted to mention, but I forget who it is. Oh, Teddy Stiga. Teddy Siga, I loved his game. I am a really big fan of his game. I feel like we're going to see him in the NHL at some point in the future. I just love how translatable of a game he plays. He plays with speed. He plays between his checks. He plays with a proactive awareness. He's really good at cutting back and beating guys one-on-one. He's really good at turning guys' feet in ozone situations and line rush situations with the puck. He's a guy that I believe at some point in the near future, depending on whenever he signs, he can be a guy that you can rely upon up and down your top nine. And Nashville, I feel like they got a really big gem here. And there's another version of him actually who's going through the draft process this year, Jack Murtaugh from the NTDB, who reminds me a lot of Teddy Stiga. And I would not be surprised to see Murtaugh end up around the same level of production that Stiga does next year in college. I just feel like Stiga, and going back to Stiga, just the game he played yesterday was so consistent, so reliable. He was one of BC's most reliable players, I would say, outside of Jacob Fowler. Like I said, even though Fowler gave up a few goals, he wasn't getting a lot of help through the back half of the game. So I felt like he needed to stand on his head a little bit, and at times he was. So with alongside that, I feel like Teddy Stigo is one of their top two, top three players in this game. He's just so consistent in terms of off puck play, on puck play, details in D zone, details in neutral zone, and details in the O zone as well. So he's a very reliable player in all facets of the game.